South Korean President Moon Jae-in says President Trump should win the Nobel Prize. Trump just wants to win the award so that he can have a Russian prostitute spank him with it.
As the Trump administration prepares for a summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un, Condoleezza Rice is warning the president to beware. According to her, Kim Jong-un has even more dandruff than Macron.
Oh, jeez.
Nickelodeon is rebooting the kids' show Double Dare. They're updating the challenges for 2018. For example, instead of crawling through slime, kids will lobby for gun control.
A database shows that President Trump has made 3,000 false or misleading claims since he took office. That's approximately one lie per bucket of chicken.
Female employees at Nike headquarters are continuing to come forward with stories of sexual harassment and gender discrimination. So when they said, just do it, they meant tell women to smile.
And finally, on an episode of Ellen, NSYNC played a round of Never Have I Ever. Things got awkward, though, when Ellen said, never have I ever asked Justin Timberlake for money. The Trump Report starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Oh, that's right. Anytime you have an excuse to play a little Duran Duran, he's hungry like the wolf. It's a pun because of Michelle Wolfe, who hosted the Correspondents Dinner. And perfect opportunity. We have Duran Duran playing in the background, and I'm explaining the title. Let's show this week's thumbnail from our friend Marissa in the booth. It's some fine work, and it is also the first thumbnail that does not feature the face of President Trump. Look, there were opportunities you could have indeed put Trump's face with Simon Le Bon's hair over it, and I think that would be horrifying, and I don't think any of us would be able to listen to Duran Duran ever again. No. In any case, thanks to all for their involvement in that. Basically, thanks to Marissa for making that and for playing the song, and thanks to Michelle Wolfe for giving me the excuse to use it. I am indeed Christian Bladt. This is indeed the Trump Report. I keep looking between cameras for no reason. Hello, my camera. Hello, our camera. Joining me on our camera, it's not just my camera, it's our camera. Chelsea Galicia, say hi to the people, please.
Hello to the people.
And on the other camera, we have Tamra Brown.
Yep. Hi, I'm Tamra.
Responsible for all the jokes this week, so thank you. And one of them was too good for me to take myself. I felt bad, so I let you have my favorite joke this week. Some weeks I will take the favorite joke for myself, but this was not one of those weeks. And on the other end of the desk, wasn't sure if he'd make it today, Scott Moore.
I'm here.
But it helps that you...
He said that so disappointed.
Yeah, we're really counting on not having Scott today.
My enthusiasm.
I ran out of other things to do. My laundry was done. I figured
Scott
I
My
might as
taxes
well.
are already done.
Scott works at the deli downstairs from the studio, and he was busy slicing some meat. But you know what? The
People
lunch
are going
rush.
to believe that.
Lunch rush was over.
He was actually at the Daytime Emmys 3 days ago, because he was
That
actually
doesn't- but
nominated.
But that could be
He was-
exactly. This is my day job.
I mean, I went to 4 Primetime Emmy Awards, and does that mean I'm a classy individual? Maybe. Probably not.
I'm definitely not. So
Some idiot didn't turn their phone off. I hope he turns it
is.
off soon. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about, and I will start with the Correspondents Dinner because that's where we got the title for our episode from. There's been much ado about nothing to some people, much ado about something. For me, it's much ado about who the hell is that they hired for? Remember when the Correspondents Dinner was amongst the most famous comedians in the world, or at least in the country? And this is not the first time, and maybe because the award has lost some of the cachet, but I had no idea who Michelle Wolfe who she was. She had some very good jokes, and she also had some real stinkers, some really, really bad jokes, and then there were also jokes that, okay, it's probably fun in the Daily Show writer's room to make jokes about abortion, but I don't know if that's really what you want to do, because that's what people say that the left does, and that's this kind of thing they use. Like, here's why you shouldn't fund Planned Parenthood, because this is how they look at it. And if you're going to make a joke about abortion, it's got to be so funny, and I don't know how exactly that works, but it's got to be so good that there's no doubt where you're like, well, this is too funny to not tell. And I think that's...
It's got to land.
Any joke that crosses a line, I feel like it's got to be so good that you're like, I can't not tell it. And it was sort of like barely a joke. You know, so I don't know. We'll talk a little bit about more of it. But Tamra, as the comedian here on the dais, if this were
Yes, Christian.
what did you think of Michelle Wolfe's performance?
I agree with what you've said so far. Some of the jokes were strong. Some of the jokes, I think, maybe not so strong. She does have a new Netflix show coming up, so the whole thing was sort of a launching pad to be like, you know, great. Could not have been better promo for her upcoming show.
Well, especially when you have, you know, basically, you know, Sean Spicer tweeted like how terrible and disgusting she was, and so she retweets, you know, where you can comment on a tweet. She says thank you to Sean Spicer, because that's the kind of endorsement you want. You know, I know it's going to be on Netflix, but you know, when you publish reviews, if you put it on the website, that should be right at the top. Well, Sean Spicer hated it.
Yeah.
For me,
the book cover, critiques.
yeah, exactly. You know, it would be the dust jacket, except of course there's no dust jacket on Netflix. For me, I think it's just look, there's a lot of things to make fun of Sarah Huckabee Sanders for. I think you just need to be mindful when the person's sitting like 8 feet from you. And so she has to sit there. Like, she actually went. The president didn't go. You know, she's there, and you don't have to, you know, you don't need to suck up to people in the room because all of a sudden then there's no jokes. But it just, again, if you're going to make fun of her, have it be funny.
Especially because of the fact that in an actual roast, in the Fires Club roast, the point of roasting somebody is they get a rebuttal.
Yeah.
For her to sit there and just have to take it, it's very painful to watch.
Yeah, and again, those were actually her weakest jokes, and those are the ones that seem to be getting the harshest reaction to. Harsher reaction than the abortion jokes, actually, from I'd say across the spectrum, both sides of the aisle, both sides of the punditry, you know, both cable news channels, and you know, all of them really.
But that being said, there, you know, I feel like people go back and forth on comedians. It's comedy. You should be able to say everything. That's what comedy is. To whoa. There is a line that needs to be crossed. Everybody has their breaking point as to like, nothing's off limits until the thing that strikes a chord with me, and then that's when you shouldn't say it. So I feel like people always go back and forth as to people are too sensitive. People should be able to say whatever they want. But that being said, this point in time, especially when we have a president in the office who says things that a commander-in-chief would have been appalled by just 4 years ago. Like, we have broken decorum in every sense of the word. And we are just in a whole new world because of that. The things that come out of the White House at this point is like we've never seen before. So if we're going to have our president say and do the things that he feels is appropriate, then I don't think at a White House Correspondents dinner it's fair to tell a comedian that you can't say certain things.
And she can say any of it, and to her credit, she's saying she wouldn't change a single word. I think that's not true, and not because of the offensive ones, but now she knows which ones, you know, didn't get laughs. So then she might have changed the words a little bit. But I think the spirit of she would still joke about the same things, I think is absolutely true. And yeah, I don't think she shouldn't be able to say any of it. I think she should have had the sense to maybe say some of it a little differently. But, you know, it's no skin off my neck. It's just, there's sort of the optics of, who is this making fun of all these people? She had some great jokes, too, though, by the way. Like, she talked about Bear Stearns. Like, that was probably the funniest part of it.
I'm bummed I missed that one.
Well, that one would be right up your alley. It's got the F word in it, so I don't think I'll tell it. Because even though we could say that here, you never know when there's kids in the room. It's the afternoon here on the West Coast. Scott, did you get the chance to see the performance or read about it? Or
I listened to not the whole thing, but part of it. And as somebody who has dabbled in the stand-up arts.
Stand-up arts. That's going to be a real major in
That's like
college soon.
It's like calling the bartender the mixologist.
Exactly.
Stand-up arts.
I have just a few points on it. One is that she basically got the best thing she could ever get right now, which is that name recognition, like you were saying, Christian, because not many people are familiar with her, and it's sort of the comedian's best thing here. There's a little bit of controversy, but it's also her being talked about. So I think
it was comedian Michael Wolfe, and I was like, whoa, that was a quick left turn from author to...
Well, Fire and Fury did have some comedic moments, but I think it's, you know, for her, this is great. But secondly, kind of to both of your points, is that comedy's there, and if you're going to this dinner, you know that you are potentially going to be the butt of the jokes, and especially when you don't have a president that attends anymore. Now it's going to be the people that work closest to him, like Sara. Sure, could you maybe use different wording? But however, I don't think it was anything that controversial. Going back to what Tamra was saying, the fact that you have a president who tweets horrible derogatory comments on a regular basis, and somehow we're going to be hypocritical when a comedian is standing up there making comments when it's supposed to be a little edgy and a little bit roasty in a way. It's to me seems very hypocritical and a little silly that we are having a big discussion about this 4 days later.
Well, let me just to that point. I'll admit that I heard the reaction before I saw it. I wasn't going to watch it.
Right,
actually,
I wasn't either
didn't
until
care.
right.
And then there was a reaction. And I realized I needed to hear it at least for one of the other shows that I do. And
Not for this one.
Not well. I would have read the bullet points this way. If nobody talked about it, I probably wouldn't have read it. We wouldn't be talking about it right now. But because it was reacted to the way it was. But then when I actually heard it, I'm like, was it that upset? I just assumed the way that the reaction was, you were going to think like, oh, it's Sara Huckabee Sanders. She's a fat pig.
Right, exactly.
I thought it was going to be something.
It was gonna be really
I
horrible.
thought it was going to be, I don't know, like maybe something that the president would write about Rosie O'Donnell. Like I thought it was going to be that level of it. What were you going to say, Chelsea?
I was going to say that I may have a gentle disagreement with where Scott's coming from on this, because I know traditionally...
Fight.
Traditionally, you're right, the White House Correspondents' Dinner is this roasty, comedic affair.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, and maybe I'm wrong about this, right now, is that really what the White House Correspondents Association should really be doing? Like, its entire industry sort of is under attack from this administration, and they kind of gave the other side fuel to their fire, rather than saying we live in, dark times where the truth is obscured. We're going, there's not really adults in the White House. We're going to be the adults of the time right now. We are the beacon of truth and light to most of the American people who get lied to constantly by the president and by Sara Huckabee Sanders. So we're going to step up here, and we're not going to play back on the level that it's dished out. And I think that choosing this comedian, and I don't know if this is sort of her level of jokes, or if this is what she brought to this event.
No one knows.
Even
Even
Trevor
Trevor Noah doesn't know.
I think it was. I think she made. Well, okay, because last year when Hassan Minhaj did the
he was funny.
He was, yeah.
Which we barely talked about on this show, by the way, because there wasn't that much reaction to it.
Exactly
Yeah.
what you're saying. I felt like the point of his 25-minute speech was basically telling the press, like, you have a responsibility, unlike you ever have had before, because we are in the time that we are in before. Like, he had like a thesis to his, and very funny jokes within this thesis,
And a very truthful, kind of heavy and serious thesis. And that's what I think that the association would have been better served had they kept up sort of that theme.
Had any overlying point that she was trying to
Although
make.
I did like the point about Flint still has no water.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was just a throwaway thing.
Right.
But then also, I do think one of the hugest points was that very early on in the speech, she was just like, somebody should have done more research before you hired me. I think that was
that's probably
in a nutshell.
The thing that made me laugh out loud the hardest is when she said that. It's like, did they even there was look, it's like the White House. There was no vetting. Why should they have vetted?
Right, so they're playing the same way that the White House is, and then they want to talk crap about the White House. They should, I think, be pointing out where the White House has gone astray, but then they themselves walked down the exact same trap.
Yeah. One of the best things she said was that the level of attention that they give to Trump, it's like, just admit it, you're in love with him, and you make so much money off of him, the least you could do is give him some. And then that went back to her theme, which is that he actually doesn't have any money. So
that was great. I love that. That should have stretched out.
I thought that there, look, was it a evenly politically balanced set of remarks? No.
Not at all.
However, there were good remarks at the expense of Democrats in that room. There were great expense at the media. People in that room who have to act like they're above all of it. And not surprisingly, President Trump wrote about it. He wrote, "The White House Correspondents' Dinner was a failure last year, but this year was an embarrassment to everyone associated with it. The filthy, air quotes, comedian totally bombed. And I'll expand on this part in a second. Couldn't even deliver her punch lines, or actually just lines. Couldn't even deliver her lines, much like the Seth Meyers weak performance. Put dinner to rest or start over. Now, the reference to Seth Meyers when he hosted is 2011, and Donald Trump was in the room, obviously not president at that point, had toyed with the idea of running for president in the past, and Seth Meyers and President Obama just demolished President Trump. Like they just every punch landed. You know, it was like a knockout after like 5 punches. He didn't hit back. He just sat there.
Barack Obama and Seth Meyers, like Barack wrote some of the jokes.
Well, because Barack delivered comments as well.
Yes.
Oh, did he?
And yes,
Yes.
Oh,
he
okay.
said like, you know, when you're president, you have to make decisions that are bigger than a disagreement between Lil Wayne and Dennis Rodman. I think, you know, those might not be the Celebrity Apprentice cast members that he used, but he basically said, I know he said Lil Wayne because the way he delivered Lil Wayne was like, you know, Obama had great delivery. And as a lot of people know, I work with Dennis Miller, the comedian, and he is not a fan of President Obama, but even on this week's podcast, he talked about how great Obama was delivering those remarks. And of course, he didn't write them. You know, usually the comedian doesn't write all the things that they do. A lot of comedians don't write everything they say. But he was so good, and Seth Meyers was great. And you know it drove Trump crazy because he's president and he's still mentioning. There's no reason to mention Seth Meyers now. And Seth Meyers, to his credit, retweeted it, and he's like, "Oh, you remembered,"
Yes.
which I think is great. And it just shows like how effective that sort of thing can be.
Well, I was gonna say it shows, not to try to jump ahead but or interrupt, but it shows because he still hasn't shown his face to any of the Correspondents' Dinner since he became president. So clearly he can't handle any kind of things directed towards him.
One of the things that we talked about this, the show that I do with Dennis Miller is called The Dennis Miller Option. It is available Wednesdays from Podcast One. Some of you may know that he tweeted about this, about the Correspondents' Dinner. And
is he unleashing the backfire tomorrow?
So he had comments of, so his joke was essentially that he had no idea who she was, so he was going to need 5 days to research who it was and then be able to come up with jokes. Now, what that actually turned into is that Wednesday is the day our podcast comes out. So it was unintentional, great promotion for us. There's a lot of interest, and suddenly we're the number 7 podcast, comedy podcast on iTunes. Anyway, that's some self-promotion there. But anyway, so he had said that, and I actually forget what the point was. Oh, so we talked about this on that show. You know, we talked about how some of these things landed, and also this idea that there's nothing to be gained for President Trump by going. You can argue that there's never anything to be gained by any of the presidents. They tend to usually have a better sense of humor about themselves. Now, Donald Trump attended a Comedy Central roast of himself, but I think he was paid, you know, handsomely, and if you believe Michelle Wolfe, he needed the money. So I think that it's really just simply there's nothing to be gained from it. They're going to make fun of him. And even if he just unleashes the greatest response ever, it's still not going to help him. He's still going to feel bad. And people are probably going to be critical of what he says. So, you know what? Go do one of your rallies. You're going to feel better about it. I think for people in the press corps, they would like him to be there. For comedians that are doing that, obviously, if President Trump's going to be there, whoever would be performing isn't going to be, hey, who's that? If you know President Trump's going to be there, you're going to get, the people will be fighting over, the comedians that we all know will be fighting over who gets the opportunity to do this. But I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Scott? Like, can you see, at least from his standpoint, it's like, it's a lose-lose-lose.
No, it is for him because it's him.
For him,
because he has got zero sense of humor and obviously can't handle, has the thinnest skin ever. However, the winning part of it for him would be just the sense that he would become more likable potentially for people because he's going and allowing that situation to happen like previous presidents.
He's being vulnerable.
And exactly, and poking fun and having that moment would make him a little bit more likable. But the fact that he refuses to go makes people then think, okay, well, again, he has too thin of skin.
He can
can't
dish it out, but he can't
take it at all, which is also part of what I found hypocritical from the people that are complaining when Kellyanne Conway and everything else, as you've seen, like tweeting all the stuff. I'm like, you work for a boss that dishes it out on a regular basis. So, in that sense, I think that would be the only thing that would be positive for some people to kind of look at him and be like, okay, well, at least he allowed himself to be poked fun of, and he's
if I can go on
like
like a
previous presidents, but no, he doesn't. So he makes himself
10
look like an idiot.
second relevant tangent. Last week when James Comey was still making the rounds about his book, when he talked to Anderson Cooper, he said one of the things that struck him about President Trump was that he never saw him laugh. That there was maybe only one time, and it was when they were at a rally and a dog barked and somebody said, "Who is that?" And somebody in the audience said, "Hillary Clinton." And he kind of laughed about that. But other than that, he's got no humor. And that actually caught Comey's attention as kind of just a bizarre thing about a person, so much so that he included that in his book. So I am very wary of people that can't laugh at all, period.
With about themselves.
I mean,
and at themselves.
Say what you will about George W. Bush. He could definitely laugh at himself.
Absolutely.
He had, by all accounts, he has a great sense of humor. Maybe people didn't like what he did as president, but you can tell that he was able to be in that room. He was able to be roasted essentially by Stephen Colbert in character. And I don't think that was one of those ones that wasn't well received, but he was there. That's the key to it. Is that he didn't have the Secret Service like usher him away because he didn't enjoy it.
So what does that say about somebody that can't, they're just too weak, emotionally weak, that they can't handle it, or he's going to be traumatized for it like 6 years later and won't be able to let it go?
He needs a safe space.
It's hard to explain.
Oh, that's funny.
It's hard to explain without dissecting what is humor, because I feel like
Tell us, Professor Tamra.
No, but like Trump he thinks he is funny. He thinks that he is making jokes when he's giving a speech, and he has those moments where he says things like, and it doesn't even actually make sense. The thing that he said, was it the comment about Megyn Kelly when he was like, she's bleeding from
her face and
her face, and who else?
Megyn Kelly. It was Mika Brzezinski.
Mika Brzezinski, yes.
Megyn Kelly was bleeding from somewhere else.
Yes.
That's what I mean. It's that comment, bleeding from somewhere else. He does these sort of like free associations where he's like, it reminds me of this thing, but he doesn't have the sort of intelligence to create a punchline. So he makes these sort of free associations where if you have a comedic mind, you can see where he was trying to go, but he wasn't able to complete the landing. So, and it's always
like
in a very
gymnastics,
it's always in a very mean-spirited voice too. Where a lot of clips from when he used to host The Apprentice, where he would make a lot of sexual innuendos about like
people being on their knees,
and things like that. It's like he thinks to him these are jokes. He's making jokes. I'm sure he thinks he's extremely funny.
Nobody has a better sense of humor than me.
Yeah, an actual setup and punchline, he definitely does not have the logic capability to pull that off. But I can also see that makes him not able to understand it when somebody else does.
When
either.
someone actually crafts a joke well, especially if it's at his expense, he doesn't understand. Like to him, I think why he thinks he's so funny is because of Crooked Hillary and Rocket Man and some of the ones that didn't stick as well. And I think that's why he thinks that he's funny. Well, because he's surrounded by people who tell him he is. But then also, I think he's just like, oh, okay, so that got a laugh. What he needs to do is he needs to take these speeches to like the Irvine Improv, and before he delivers them, he can workshop them a little bit.
Yes.
Again, like just real quick, like it's the same, because there's the side of humor that is the actual intellectual written, the joke of what is being made, but then there's also the delivery, which is like the reason that Dane Cook is as popular as he is because he has a very like humorous persona. It's his delivery. He has no jokes. He's not telling jokes. And Trump is the Dane Cook. Like that's what he is.
You're absolutely right, and I'm glad that you explained to me why people think Dane Cook is funny, because I've this whole time I've been trying to figure it out. Anyway, if you're there in the chat, let us know what your thoughts were on the Correspondents' dinner, and if you're watching this after the fact, leave comments on the YouTube page, and maybe, just maybe, we'll read them next week. Let's move on to another topic that might elicit some laughter here in the studio. The leader of South Korea says that President Trump could indeed get himself a Nobel Peace Prize.
I think we're taking it a little too far. Didn't he just say that he could? I've been hearing so many things that, but the next time I hear it, it's going to be that he actually won it. Didn't he just mention that if things go well, maybe he should? But no, that's
well, he's just saying that if he does this, and it's interesting because just last week, I asked the question of just about denuclearizing North Korea, but actual being involved, and all parties are like, you know what, we couldn't have done this without President Trump. If he's actually involved and there is peace between the two of them, and maybe there's not even a border anymore, you know why it's not so far-fetched, the idea that President Trump could win a Nobel Peace Prize? Yasser Arafat has a Nobel Peace Prize. So at that point, they're just like, oh, okay, so we're just going to kind of give it to people who kind of help.
Yeah.
You know, he had to share it with Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres. But Yasser Arafat has a Nobel Peace Prize. So I think that was the point where the peace, was a little bit, it was probably in air quotes.
Right, the leader of the Rohingya, the leader where the Rohingya refugees are leaving, she also won the Nobel Peace Prize, and the consideration is that it should be removed from her. So yeah, I guess it's really not all
it's very
that.
And didn't
subjective.
President Obama get it the year he
did.
killed Osama
got
bin
it.
Laden? It was like...
Or he got it the first year. I think he
Yeah.
got it in 2009, which was also interesting because he had just become president.
Yeah.
But
that's like writing
it was more
two autobiographies
it
before
was
you're president,
more,
which he also did.
And I
Yes.
get it. It was a little bit more like, okay, why did he actually get this?
Yeah.
What did he do? So it was a little more symbolic.
It's not even that
It
cool
was
anymore.
It was more like a lifetime Grammy
was-
award.
yes,
You just
it
wanted
was-
to come to the ceremony. And I'm going to derail the conversation for a second because to backtrack to that 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner, President Obama's up there giving great jokes at the moment
Right.
where he's sending SEAL Team 6 into action to kill Osama bin Laden.
Yeah.
And there are jokes being made about how he can't find Osama bin Laden. And he's like, nah.
Yeah.
He's cutaways to him laughing. Anyway, but back to South Korea. And this is something that could happen. And I will ask basically the same question I asked last week. Scott, if President Trump is, all parties agree that he's responsible, he's involved for helping.
That's a lot.
Yeah. If they say, if Kim
Hypothetical
Jong-un,
Wax Foundation.
if Kim Jong-un and the leader of South Korea, whose name I always forget,
J-N.
yeah, exactly, Moon Jae-in, if they say like, we couldn't have touched the president, so he would deserve a Nobel Peace Prize, wouldn't he?
What are we teaching the children of
know.
America?
No.
To try to make peace.
Yeah.
If
So
crazy,
I'm sorry, you're against peace, Chelsea? Happy May Day, comrade.
is
May
this
1st
nicely played? But is this like telling children if somebody comes at you with missiles, you just make fun of them, call them rocket? I mean, is this?
I mean, if it gets you to put down the missiles and sign an agreement, sure.
So
if
is
it's
this-
effective.
So we're going to fight crazy with crazy,
Well-
and we are going to sanction this.
I mean, have you ever watched a Real Housewives show? The only way to fight crazy is with crazy. I've actually never watched one of them, but I assume.
Yeah,
that,
right.
I
You're
just
assume
missing
that, I
out.
assume that was a credible reference. I'm just guessing.
So is that
mean,
that where we're
well-
going? That's what's called peace.
Right, and I don't think, if anything, it should be the two leaders for North and South Korea because they're the ones that have been meeting. They're the ones that are going through that. I mean, it would just be weird to say, oh, we didn't meet except that Trump helped arrange this. Like, it feels a little far-fetched.
Well, what if they hold it at Mar-a-Lago?
But I mean, they already met. They already met
that's
the
true.
two leaders. So I'm saying if it was going to be anything and it actually does move forward and there is some sort of peace or at least a thaw, which, by the way, this happened back in 2000. And we see how well that worked out as well.
Right. We were in the same.
We
I
were
don't
in the
think
same
people
situation
know.
in 2000. They don't. Yeah, they're not thinking about it. And it was actually
We
even.
didn't hear about this.
Yes, and it was very similar back in 2000 with Kim Jong-un's father at the time. But the point is, it should be those two leaders more than Donald Trump because they're the ones that are having to deal with the peace. They're the ones that are on that peninsula that have to deal with whatever strategies they deal with, not someone that swoops in from the side that wants to take credit. Now, again, if they say that in front of all interested parties in Japan and China and everyone else says, yes, it was because of him and whatever, I would say, okay, sure, they did it. He did a great effort, like, doing the Oscars and
he
selling
got
out your
an A for
screeners
effort.
and getting
Well,
people to vote for you kind of thing. But
So
otherwise, I don't think it would be
basically,
him.
if he was Harvey Weinstein, before Harvey Weinstein was Harvey Weinstein. So I guess what you're saying is you feel like the leaders of North and South Korea should win it. Now, if they
If
win
it was between them
yeah,
and him
sure.
and
If
everything,
they win the
yes.
Nobel Peace Prize and Donald Trump doesn't, do you think that Kanye West will storm the ceremony and say, I'm going to let you finish, but DT should have won this? I'm not sure. Tamra, what do you think about all this?
I don't understand why Moon Jae-in would say that Donald Trump should get the prize when why not Xi Jinping or Shinzo
Right.
Abe when they're equally
Right, when they're there in the region
Yeah.
and they're dealing with it.
I guess it's
And
he's
it's their
all
backyard.
that tells me is that the South Korean president is in on this sort of sensational social media a sleight of hand. We're bringing something. I think he's trying to do the distraction method.
The sleight of hand,
Yeah.
yes. Chelsea, do you think that there's a chance that Moon Jae-in is saying, oh, somebody should win a Nobel Peace Prize? No, not me. No, not me, not me. But, Donald Trump maybe, but again, not me. Is he just trying to have people be like, no, I don't want to give it to Trump, but you know what? You make a good point. Do you think he's looking for it without fishing for it?
That hadn't occurred to
Me
me.
either.
Well, that's how I look at the world.
I mean, I guess it's true because it could be a possibility because I can't imagine that he could be that serious. Because really, in essence, if we look at what has Trump done about this situation, he has tweeted insults and instigated kind of this back and forth and, my button's bigger than yours. This is how we conduct peace talks. Now, if it is successful in achieving peace, okay, but that doesn't mean that was a peaceful way to win over peace. I just don't see how anybody could take that seriously, especially when they're saying part of the reason why Kim Jong-un has come to the table is because his nuclear program is collapsing, and it's it blew itself up or something. I'm not quite sure, but that he's just doing this because he did. I was going to say something highly inappropriate, but he did his show. Well, it was all just a show to scare people, let people think that he's got something so he can come to the table looking strong. But please somebody tell me the connection between Trump's insults and Kim Jong-un changing his mind about anything. I guess my lawyer self do not see the connection. I see that there is an association with time, that they were made sort of near each other, but that's not a causative relationship enough for me.
I think that we're not looking far back enough, and the only person that would need this Nobel Peace Prize, of course, would be Dennis Rodman, because without him, there would not have been any thawing here. So interesting that we're talking about this, because this is an excellent opportunity to introduce a fun new feature we're going to do today called Fast Facts. We should have orchestrated this better before we went on the air, but because we didn't, so I'll go first, we'll go down the line, and then Tamra will do number 5 and I'll do number 6. And I should have printed these out with names, but you know what? I didn't.
That's how we fly
So
around
yeah,
here.
that's
Right.
how we roll. So as we've been discussing this past Friday, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in pledged to make peace. But in order to reunify the Korean peninsula, the North and South are going to have to find some common ground. Now, all of us here at the Trump Report, we thought this opportunity would be a good chance to educate ourselves about what North and South Korea have in common, with a new, minimally researched and barely prepared segment we call Fast Facts. And here's what we found. In South Korea, they speak Korean. In North Korea, they speak only when spoken to.
Fast fact number 2. In South Korea, it is custom to respect your elders. In North Korea, it is custom to murder your elders who pose a threat to dear leader's authority. Christian is so funny.
I thought that was a good one. Look, I didn't write these.
Oh.
I can legitimately laugh at them. I'm not laughing at
I was
myself.
going to say your great research team that we have here. We've got like dozens of
Absolutely.
researchers
Yeah.
working around the clock.
Minimally researched interns.
Yes.
Fast fact number 3. In Seoul, South Korea, they have a vibrant arts district. In Pyongyang, North Korea, they have a vibrant Dennis Rodman.
Oh, the bell's over there. I feel like
Oh, yeah, we should have the bell.
That's all right.
Fast fact number 4. In South Korea, they eat kimchi with every meal. And in North Korea, Kim Jong-un eats every meal with every meal. Meal with a meal.
I don't know why food jokes get me.
Fast fact number 5. In Haeundae Park in Seoul, South Korea, it has penis-shaped statues. The central luxury mansion in Pyongyang, North Korea, has a penis-shaped dictator.
And finally, fast fact number 6. Cutting-edge technology made in South Korea includes the microchip in the Apple iPhone. Cutting-edge technology made in North Korea includes the Apple. And that is Fast Facts. Let us know what you think. Do you have any Fast Facts of your own? Send them to us in the comments, or you can tweet them at us. We'll give all the Twitter there. Thanks to Tamra for minimally preparing. And, I think that the preparation was a little too minimal on my part. We should have had the bell. I think that would have been fun after each one. But you know what?
You live and you learn.
This is show business. We'll get it next time.
Yeah.
Anyway,
segment.
You know, I made a reference not that long ago to Kanye West, and I will admit I don't get it at all. Like the whole Kanye thing from beginning to end. It's not my thing. I understand
Like why he's so
why people like him.
celebrated?
Like that his music supposedly sounds good. Look, it's
that he's
again
a genius.
believe me, I've heard that he's genius, and I'm just like, if you say so, I don't get it. But
I'm with
the
you.
idea that he's just like, oh, you know, look, and it's gotten stronger because he's doubled down and tripled down and quadrupled down. But the idea that he initially was like, you know, I don't really hate this Trump character, and then people are like, oh my God, what's wrong with him? You know, he obviously needs some kind of psychiatric, observation, which he probably does need just for other reasons. But I find the whole thing to be interesting because it's like, well, Kanye, how dare you like President Trump? And this, I already kind of have like a nothing opinion of him. So this certainly hasn't raised it. It hasn't really lowered it though. So I don't know. Am I missing something with Kanye?
Yeah, he just
Tamra
used you.
Oh, because I'm talking about him?
Yes, and I think that's the point, because I would not have known, had it not been for me reading about this, that he has like 5 albums coming out. I wouldn't care, so I wouldn't know that.
5 albums?
But because of the coverage from these comments, these tweets, that's how I know that. So he won. He won this game.
Do people
and I
buy
just
albums anymore? Why would you put out 5 of them? I don't even know if you can sell one. I mean, he could sell one of them.
It's the exact same thing that happened when he said George Bush doesn't care about black people. That was in preparation for an album that was coming out shortly after he
The
said
album
that.
was called George Bush
Does not care about black people.
Which, before we move on, let's talk about that moment when that happened on that fundraiser. And that was for Katrina. Poor Mike Myers, whatever you think of him, whatever you think of Austin Powers, he's standing there next to him and he's like, no, go to a tight shot. And poor Mike Myers is stuck there.
I know.
And he's like, I can't be like this.
Yeah.
I can't say no, because then that's like, oh, okay. So you think that George Bush likes black people, and you also don't want to endorse the comments. So you're like, look, I'm Canadian.
No skin in the game here.
I'm here as a favor. Like I'm trying to help you raise money. You know, I mean, I thought that if I picked up a phone and I said shagadelic, maybe somebody'd donate an extra $100. What are you doing? Anyway, so this is just like that. And do you think him, ruining Taylor Swift's speech, who I also don't get, but Taylor Swift's speech, do you think that was also? So this is everything motivated
Did
towards
he have
selling
an
the
album
product?
coming out after that?
I don't know. Is that why he married a Kardashian? Is it all come down to him like moving the product?
I can't analyze Kanye's entire existence, but I do think he has some mental issues that need to be addressed. But
kind of like the president.
He's
I did see something. It was, I don't know if I want to be laughing at this, especially announcing it, but did anybody else see the meme where you have the backsides of Amber Rose, Kim, and Trump, and it says, well, now we see what Kanye likes about all of them.
Well, Trump does have a little junk in the trunk.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's okay.
that
to
booty
say
though.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, back to your thoughts, Tamra. Sorry.
I just think that Kanye has a grade A management team that knows when to let him unleash the Kanye, the crazy, so that it works out to his advantage.
Yeah, and I mean, it always works out to his advantage because here we are talking about
Right.
it, and you had the president tweet back to him, you know. So I mean, there's obviously something to be said there. Scott, your thoughts on Kanye in general, if you like, but about if you have time, but about sort of him weighing in on this and at
Trump
a time.
is my brother.
Let's admit,
Yeah.
it is exactly. They look so much alike. It's not really the time to be going out there and really standing by the president. What do you think about Kanye doing this?
No, I have to agree with Tamra on that. I think it's a great publicity move for him because he knows that Donald Trump is easily flattered, and if you say a couple nice things to him, especially someone that has also a celebrity, that's going to make him feel very special and flattered. And now he's tweeting about it, and it's giving him free publicity. So he was very smart to do that, and I didn't even realize he had multiple albums coming out. But now it does make more sense because I kept thinking in my head too, I'm like, what is the reason behind the timing of him doing this? So I do have to say it's great publicity for him.
And by the way, you
And
telling
he's
me that
crazy.
Kanye has 5 albums coming out, it's the same reaction I had when I heard that James Cameron's working on 3 Avatar sequels. I'm like, are you sure that people want that many? But you know what? Again, what do I know? The interesting
Great.
thing was there was a point early in sort of this narrative of Kanye talking about Trump, and Chance the Rapper, whom I'm not even going to pretend I know anything about Chance the Rapper, but I've heard the name before. I at least know that much. Sort of, added it a little bit, and he immediately had to clarify. Oh no, I don't like Trump. I like Kanye. That's what I meant. And I think that I guess it takes a certain kind of crazy to stand by Donald Trump and continue to stand. Because I mean, we talked about was it Shania Twain? Was that last week
Yes.
already? That was
Uh-huh.
this is how quickly.
I know.
Yeah, and she
It was
was
like
like,
years ago.
he's like, oh, I would have voted for him. No, not really. Just kidding. I would not have voted for him.
I'm
I don't
sorry,
Know,
I
I don't know
didn't
why I said that. I think somebody hacked my brain and put that in there. Anyway, I don't know, but it's all interesting. And if Kanye legitimately likes Donald Trump, good for him that he decided to go public with it and not just like, yeah, I'm gonna send you a little note.
He did go to Trump Tower right after the president won. So his affinity for him is not this new thing.
Right.
I just think, the reason he's coming out with it now is because it gets him some more attention.
Right.
Well, and he was angling to be mentioned on the Trump report. I think is the only reason that Kanye did this.
Naturally, like most
I
people.
think if somebody briefed Kanye on the more specifics of what Trump does in his political life, I think Kanye would be singing a different tune. But when you only have a very surface grasp of what's going on politically, and you're creating the narrative that you want out of somebody that you see as just brash and doesn't care what people think, then I can see why Kanye would be on his side.
I kind of do see them as 2 peas in a pod. I do think, playing armchair psychology, that whatever affliction Trump has, Kanye has a similar strain. So I kind of see the similarities and see why Kanye would look at him as his long-lost twin.
Speaking of long-lost twin, Dr. Harold Bornstein, whom I, before the show, said looked like Bruce Valanche, enough so that I thought that a thumbnail photo of Dr. Harold Bornstein, I really thought I told Scott this. I was like, why did they put a picture of Bruce Valanche there? No, so he's the doctor that I don't remember the exact verbiage that he used, but he talked about just how tremendously healthy. He was like the healthiest human being that he had ever seen, and I think he signed off on the document that said that President Trump was like 3 inches taller than he actually is, so that his weight, the weight was like legitimate, but by saying he was taller, it made that he was like 2 pounds under obese, which that's right up your alley because it's a fat joke.
What? I don't like fat jokes. I like food jokes.
Is it because you don't like to eat?
That's not true. I do like to eat.
I know.
every type of kale under the sun.
I saw you eating that veggie burger from across the street last week. Anyway, so Dr. Harold Bornstein, believe it or not, there's a point in here. He was President Trump's physician for, believe it or not, more than 3 decades. And the White House is saying that his office was not raided. And that happened when. What he's saying.
What? Huh?
So
He said his office was not
not raided when a White House aide arrived at his practice and retrieved the president's medical records more than a year ago. He's saying that he was robbed, and that it was basically like a theft. So it wasn't like an official investigation. And so he says, I've been waiting humiliated for an entire year. And how would you feel if you cared for someone for 35 years and they came and robbed your office? So what he's saying, go ahead, sorry.
When I heard him talking about it, he described it as, I feel like I have been raped.
Well, that word does not appear in the quotes that I have, and I'm not doubting
that's
that you
what I
heard
heard,
it.
yes,
but I
but I
did
heard the
not.
same thing.
That is not. So here's the problem. You see what website I'm on, just CNN.com. So that's fake news. That's my fault. I should not have gone to fake news, and I should have known better. But the point is that
Sarah Huckabee Sanders, that is standard operating procedure.
It's right here.
When somebody uses that kind of phrase, that
SOP,
kind of
yeah.
that it's standard operating procedure. The White House has a standard operating procedure about how to recover the president's personal medical records? I don't think so. Actually, I'm pretty sure because I have. In the lawyer world, we get it by a subpoena if you want them, but a patient can get their own records if they want. They go and they ask for a copy, but they don't get to take the actual physical originals.
You don't actually get to go into the office after hours and take it. I mean, I don't think that it was... That's like saying it was standard operating procedure for G. Gordon Liddy to let himself into, or have his thugs let themselves into the Watergate and just like, we're just going to help ourselves to a few things here. It's fine.
And apparently Trump was pissed because the doctor came out and said that he had prescribed Trump Propecia for his hair, and that really pissed him off. And that Trump said, "Oh, you thought you were going to be the White House doctor? Well, not anymore."
Yeah, well, and by the way, if ever there was an ad that Propecia does not really work, it would be whatever that thing is that is on the president's head. So
I disagree. I think it's doing its job.
Well,
For a
that's true.
70-year-old, what is he, 70?
He's 71 now?
Yeah, almost
71-year-old
72.
man to have that much hair that it's like...
It's not that much. It's just
just
long and
long and
yeah.
stringy
and fluff.
I'd
fluffed
say
and combed
that
over quite a
Propecia's
way.
working real hard, and it's doing. I'd say that's an endorsement for
That's true.
Propecia.
It is working very hard. It's,
You too
yeah.
could have hair like that.
But so
It's a
I mean,
great
the
advertisement.
doctor's basically saying is that basically the quote is they barged through the back door, they terrified the secretaries, they didn't even go after hours. They pushed aside the patient that was in there, and he didn't clarify who they were, but that it did not adhere to privacy laws. We have no reason to assume that this, other than that he's a weird-looking guy. There's no reason to assume that this didn't happen. Scott, you hear this? Does this just reinforce, like, oh, okay, but the White House just thinks they can do whatever they want?
Yes, and it does, of course. But the whole thing is just weird. Like I don't even understand.
I don't understand
whole
why he
thing.
waited a year to come out. Was he afraid for his life?
That's what I'm saying. Like I don't understand this whole story. It's very bizarre to me from the beginning. But nothing should surprise me anymore with this.
But there's probably
administration.
something in there that
Yes.
talked about a referral to a psychiatrist,
Right,
perhaps,
right.
and Trump didn't want that to get
Yes,
out.
of course. It's,
Not that it would get out, but he probably doesn't know that.
Yes, or also afraid that somehow he would leak it or something, and somehow it would, the whole thing is very weird to me, and I don't really quite understand it. But
Is he gunning for the VA secretary job or something?
It's open.
Does he-
Yeah. I don't know. My thought is that Dr. Bornstein has 5 albums coming out at some point in the next year, and you just figured that this is finally
Yes,
the
the
time to get it out
use
there.
this publicity now to his peak advantage.
Anyway, we that believe it or not, that wraps up our show for this week. We talked about like 2.5 topics, and I think we had a great conversation. I hope you did too. And leave us your comments on YouTube, or you can follow the show on Twitter at Trump Report ABTV, and you can follow me on Twitter at ChristianDMZ, and you'll find links to all the various things that I do, including the aforementioned Dennis Miller option Wednesdays from Podcast One. Chelsea Galicia, where do people find you?
Whoa.
At Chelsea Alicia.
Tamra.
It's hard for me to match that. I
Tamra.
just don't
That
know.
energy.
Where do people find you, Tamra?
Subscribe to my YouTube page. Hey, Tamra.
And maybe Michelle Wolfe will make jokes about one of the impressions you do. We'll find
That's
out.
right.
And Scott Moore.
You can find me on Twitter at sman80.
All right, thanks so much. We'll be back next Tuesday at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. But until then, have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz
you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.